Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Today we're going to be talking about retrospectives.
Ooh, interesting.
But not just, like the fun kind of looking back.
Right.
More like those times we need to, really dissect our disappointments.
Oh, I see where we're going with this.
Yeah, it can be tough, but also super valuable.
Totally agree.
And to help guide us, we're going to be looking at this article called A Retrospectiva y as Disipsas de Ano
Okay.
by Marynês Pereira. You might recognize her name. She's done a lot of great work in neurobusiness and emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. Interesting.
Yeah, so this article is kind of a personal take on disappointment.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I think what's so powerful about this article is Pereira doesn't just skim the surface. She goes deep on how gut-wrenching disappointment can be, especially when it comes from, the people we really trust.
Absolutely. The people we think we know.
And you know what? That makes me wonder, is there a difference between, like, a work disappointment versus a personal one?
Oh, that's a great question. It makes me think of one of Pereira's main points.
Okay.
She talks about how the sting of disappointment lingers longer when it's someone close to us.
I think we all know that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And to really hammer this home, she shares some of her own experiences in the article.
Wow, that's brave of her.
It is. She talks about being let down by people she had mentored, even helped in their careers.
Ouch. I bet that added another layer of hurt to the situation.
Totally. It's like on top of the initial disappointment, you're also questioning your judgment. You're like, how could I not see this coming?
Exactly. And that's where I think her concept of voluntary blindness comes in.
Oh, yeah. This is fascinating.
Right. It's like we choose to ignore red flags,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because we want to believe the best in someone.
It's almost as if we're trying to shield ourselves from the potential hurt.
Right. And who wants to face that?
No one. It's way easier to just, pretend everything's fine.
Exactly. But, as Pereira points out, that kind of selective perception can backfire.
Makes sense.
The longer we ignore those warning signs, the harder the fall is going to be when reality hits.
Oof. Yeah, that makes total sense. So it's about being more discerning over time.
Right. Learning to trust our gut when things feel off.
Okay, I like that. But what about when those warning signs are more subtle? Or like when we're dealing with someone who's really good at manipulation?
Oh, that's tough.
Pereira even mentions how our own brains might be working against us in those situations.
That's where her expertise in neurobusiness comes in.
Okay, tell me more about this.
She argues that even when someone is being deceitful, their brain still knows right from wrong.
So basically they know they're doing something wrong.
Exactly. It creates this internal conflict.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Right. And she says this can lead to stress, poor decision-making, even self-sabotage.
So even if they seem to be getting away with something, it's not really a win-win situation.
Right. Because they're battling with their own internal moral compass.
Whoa, that's mind-blowing.
And this ties in to her idea of the law of return.
Okay, remind me about this one.
It suggests that actions have consequences, not necessarily punishment,
Right.
but a natural balancing act.
Okay, but what does that look like in real life? Does this law of return always apply?
Those are excellent questions.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it opens a whole philosophical can of worms about justice and accountability.
I'm ready to open that can. But we're going to have to save that for next time.
You bet. We've got a lot more to uncover.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive into disappointment. Okay, so we've been talking about how disappointment can really hit us hard, especially when it comes from people we trust.
Right.
And Pereira really pushes us to trust our gut, when things feel off.
Right.
But how do we actually do that? Like, are there any specific red flags we should be looking out for?
Well, Pereira outlines several warning signs in her article.
Okay, good.
Like, for example, she talks about this lack of reciprocity.
Oh, yeah.
It's that feeling of constantly giving without receiving anything in return.
It's like you're always the one putting in the effort.
Right. And you end up feeling drained and resentful.
Yeah, for sure.
She also mentions evasive behavior as a warning sign.
Okay, I've definitely seen that before.
Have you? It's when someone's always dodging deeper conversations or deflecting questions.
Oh, yeah. It's like they're hiding something.
Exactly.
Oh.
And they're keeping you at a distance.
Not letting you get too close.
Exactly.
Mm.
Pereira also highlights the impact of constant criticism and negativity.
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing to offer constructive feedback,
Right.
but it's another to constantly put someone down or make them feel inadequate.
Ugh. Yeah, that's just...
Toxic.
It is. And it creates this atmosphere of tension.
Like you said, walking on eggshells.
Yeah. Pereira then talks about how this can even extend to devaluing ideas or projects.
So it's not just personal, it can happen professionally too.
Absolutely. It's like having your contributions minimized or worse, stolen.
That's awful. I can only imagine how demoralizing that would be.
Yeah, it really undermines your sense of worth. And it makes me think about another red flag Pereira brings up. Lack of loyalty.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. It's that feeling of not having someone's back.
Like they wouldn't think twice about throwing you under the bus.
Right. If it benefited them in some way.
Ugh, talk about a betrayal of trust.
It is. It's really hurtful.
And it's interesting, Pereira also suggests paying attention to someone's past relationships.
Yes. She points out that if someone has a history of troubled or dramatic relationships,
Oh, I see.
it could indicate some deeper patterns.
Makes sense.
It's not about judging someone solely on their past,
Right.
but it's something to be mindful of.
It's like that saying, past behavior can be a predictor of future behavior.
Exactly. And finally, and I think this is super important, Pereira really emphasizes the power of intuition.
That gut feeling.
Yes, that feeling that something's off, even if you can't quite explain it.
Like that little voice saying, hey, pay attention.
Exactly. And I think so often we dismiss those feelings,
We try to rationalize them away.
But Pereira's saying we need to learn to trust our intuition.
Even when it doesn't seem logical.
Exactly. Which can be tough.
It can. So how do we differentiate between, anxiety or paranoia and genuine intuition?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it requires a lot of self-awareness and mindfulness.
Like really paying attention to how we feel?
Right. Tuning into our bodies and noticing how we react in certain situations.
Yeah, like are there any physical signs that something's off?
Well, think about it. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest or that knot in your stomach?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Those can be clues.
Like our bodies are trying to tell us something.
They are.
Yeah.
Pereira also highlights the importance of paying attention to our dreams.
Our dreams. Interesting.
Yeah. She believes that our subconscious often picks up on things that our conscious minds might be blocking out.
So like those recurring themes or symbols.
Exactly. It's recognizing that our intuition can show up in different ways and learning to understand those messages.
Okay, so let's say you're noticing some of these red flags. What then?
Right. What do you do?
Do you confront the person? Do you try to work things out? Or do you just walk away?
Well, I think it depends on the situation
Okay.
and the severity of the red flags.
So if it's a minor issue, you might try to address it directly.
Right. See if it can be resolved.
But if it's a pattern of behavior that's causing you real pain,
Then creating some distance or even ending the relationship might be the healthiest option.
tough, but sometimes necessary.
Right. And all of this ties back to the powers retrospectives
Oh yeah, they can help us recognize these patterns.
and learn from our past experiences.
So it's not just about dwelling on the negative.
Right.
It's about using those experiences to inform our future choices.
Exactly. It's about learning to trust ourselves, recognize those red flags, and create healthier relationships.
And that, my friends, is what we're all about, creating healthier and more fulfilling relationships.
Absolutely.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into disappointment.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, so we've talked about those really painful betrayals and even some subtle warning signs to watch out for.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of curious what happens after disappointment.
That's a great question.
Like, how do we actually pick ourselves up and move forward?
Well, Pereira's insights on this are really powerful.
Okay.
She delves into some pretty deep concepts, like this idea of the law of return.
Oh, yeah, we touched on this a bit earlier.
Yeah, it's this idea that the universe has a way of balancing things out.
Like, what we put out into the world comes back to us.
That's one way to think about it. It's not necessarily about revenge or anything more like a natural consequence of our actions.
Okay, I'm following you.
And Pereira actually connects this idea
Okay.
to the fascinating fact that even a deceitful person's brain,
Yeah.
understands right from wrong.
Oh, yeah, that blew my mind last time.
Right. It's like, even if they're outwardly manipulating others,
Yeah.
there's this internal struggle happening.
So they're not really getting away with it scot-free?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Pereira says this internal dissonance can lead to all sorts of problems like stress, poor decisions, even self-sabotage.
It's almost like their own mind is rebelling.
Exactly. It's trying to course correct.
That is wild. But it also makes me wonder, like, if we all have this inner moral compass,
Right.
why do some people still choose to act badly?
That's a question that's puzzled philosophers for ages.
I bet.
Pereira doesn't have all the answers, but she does suggest that things like ego fear,
Okay.
Even a distorted view of reality can really cloud our judgment.
It's like we convince ourselves that the rules don't apply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or that we can justify our actions.
And you know what? In our world today where we see examples of people seemingly getting away with it all the time,
Yeah,
it's easy to start thinking that ethics are kind of optional.
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
But I think Pereira's work offers a different perspective.
Okay. Tell me more.
She reminds us that there's this deeper level of accountability happening,
Oh, I see.
even if we don't always see it.
So we don't have to wait for some external punishment because our choices have natural consequences.
Exactly. Both internal and external.
And those internal ones like guilt and shame, those can be really tough to deal with.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about avoiding punishment,
Right.
but about taking responsibility for our actions.
And ultimately, I think that's what makes Pereira's message so hopeful.
Okay, how so?
Well, even in the face of disappointment,
Yeah.
even after experiencing betrayal, she reminds us that we always have the power to choose a different path.
We can learn from those tough experiences and build stronger relationships.
Absolutely. And that's such a powerful message of hope.
It really is. It's like Pereira saying, even though disappointments are inevitable, we can still choose to move forward with hope and wisdom.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And remember, everyone, this deep dive was inspired by the incredible work of Marynês Pereira,
Be sure to check out her work.
especially her article, A Retrospectiva is as de Subsos de, no.
Such a thought-provoking piece.
It really is. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a great discussion.
As always, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and maybe even a little inspiring.
Keep those minds open.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.